Accents. Unique New York. Unique New York. How do you do a good accent? We've all seen comedians like Russell Peters or Fred Armisen who have a gift for mimicry. But is that a skill anyone can learn? Well, yeah, but there's a trick to it. There's a system. And the reason there's a system is that languages and dialects are inherently systematic. So we have to systematize things if we want to capture them. Today, I'm going to be talking about how to reduce an accent to a handful of comprehensible and digestible components and how to actually use this knowledge. This has a ton of applications. It'll be useful to people who want to learn to do other accents. Actors, I'm looking at you. It'll also be useful, with some tweaking, for anyone who wants to improve their accent in a foreign language. And beyond that, it can give us a better appreciation for people like Hank Azaria and Fred Armisen and Russell Peters. It can also give you the tools to better understand non-native speakers of your language so you aren't tripped up by their accents. Beyond being useful, I promise you that when we get to regional accents, you're going to have an aha moment, and many of you are going to realize that not only do you have an accent, but just how much of an accent you have. I once met a man in Louisville, Kentucky who said to me, and a colleague of mine, "Y'all might not believe this, but I used to have a real thick Tennessee accent." We did believe it. Let's get into this. I'm Dr. Taylor Jones, and this is Language Jones. Today's video is sponsored by LingoPie. LingoPie is a platform that I was a little wary of at first, and it turns out that they are now one of my absolute favorite sponsors. LingoPie is a video on-demand platform that allows learners to watch native content in their target languages. They have French, Spanish, Italian, German, Portuguese, and they've just added Russian, Japanese, Korean, and Mandarin Chinese. I wish I'd had this when I studied Mandarin in college. One of the things that makes them so great is they have subtitles in both English and your target language. There's mouse over word lookup, on-screen translation, and you can even change the playback speed. You can add words to flashcards and quizzes as well. Not only that, but they've also rolled out a Say It feature where you can compare your pronunciation to what you heard in the shows that you were watching. My absolute favorite, though, is the sentence looping. You can play the sentences that you want to hear over and over and over again until you get the melody of it. And in Mandarin, that includes getting the tones right. They offer a 7-day free trial, and you can use my exclusive promo code for a discount. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, check my code, click on the link below, and enjoy. Happy learning. Now, back to the video. I really wanted to make this video for years because it's just so fascinating. Of course, I wrote an entire dissertation on regional accents, so I might be a little bit biased, but if you're watching my channel, chances are so are you. So let's start with English and kind of work our way out. First thing to know is that everybody has an accent. Yes, even you. Especially you. Have you heard yourself? When people say, "I don't have an accent," what they're actually saying is, "I don't stand out in my own speech community. I sound like people from here and now." That's why the guy from Tennessee could proudly tell us in Kentucky that he had shed his accent. But he was talking to two New Yorkers for whom his lack of an accent was almost impenetrable. Leave me a comment, by the way, with a time that you couldn't understand an accent if you've got a good story there. The only way to really not have an accent is to not speak. And even then, it's hit or miss. My colleague, Mr. Christopher Hall, sometimes tells people, "Don't you look at me in that tone of voice." But we'll stick to spoken language accents for now. An accent, to my mind, consists of 3 principal parts that we can further subdivide. That's consonants, vowels, and intonation. In each part, we're talking about sounds, not letters. So written English has 5 letters that it calls vowels, but spoken English has like 18 or 21 or whatever. A consonant is a sound that's made by obstructing the airflow out of your mouth. It can be a complete obstruction like p, t, k, and b, d, g, or it can be partial like f and v and s and z or l. These create turbulence in the air you expel, and we hear that turbulence as different sounds. A vowel is a sound created without that kind of obstruction. Where your tongue is in your mouth, whether high, low, front, back, and whether your lips are rounded, all affect what we interpret as a vowel. Then there's secondary stuff like whether your vellum is down and air flows through your nose. Lastly, intonation is the rise and fall of your voice. It includes pitch, intensity, and other factors, but we can think of it as the melody of your speech. Intonation in particular is where Fred Armisen really shines. The consonants and the melody are relatively easy, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the vowels than anything else. The thing to understand about consonants is that any given accent has regular patterns, which linguists sometimes refer to as rules. They're not made up by anybody, they're just patterns that the language follows. So for instance, native speakers of American English pronounce P, T, and K with a puff of air at the beginning of a word. Pit, pit. But if those are in a consonant cluster at the beginning of a word, like spit, there's no puff. Pit, spit. Most people, when they learn another language, get lazy and use the closest consonant in their language to approximate the sounds in the other language. This is why French speakers have no hitches and say this instead of this, and so on. And that puff of air thing is why English speakers are so easy to pick out in most languages. Some key things to think about and to listen for to really train your ears and your tongue are not just replacements like I just talked about, but also exact positioning. Most Romance language speakers make an unaspirated PT and K, but they also do it closer to the teeth than most English speakers. We might not know exactly what we're hearing when we're hearing it, but that's what we're hearing as an accent. So now, vowels. This is the meat of this, and this part of the video will be super useful to actors and linguistic students and basically everybody. But first, please like and subscribe and comment. It really helps with the algorithm. Okay, I'm now going to draw mainly on John C. Wells's idea of lexical sets, in layman terms, word groups. This is something that has been hugely important in linguistics and that all of my colleagues use, although they sometimes use it wrong. There's one weird trick to it that we have to remember. It's crazy to think that Wells came up with this whole system over a weekend after being annoyed at a paper by Weinreich, my advisor, Bill Lebove's advisor. And for everything else Wells has done, this will be what he's remembered for. Here's the idea. Any given accent is just a system of sounds. For vowels, that means you have some number of vowels. And it's a continuous space, so literally what makes those vowels different is whether you can find a minimal pair. That is, two words that mean different things and where the only difference in the word is one sound, in this case, the vowel. So Wells had 27 possible vowels that he identified. I don't have 27 vowels because I have a few of what are called mergers, but we'll get into that in a second. Wells's genius was to just group all of these and give each a keyword as a reference. So when I say the words bed, read, let, gecko, said, fell, chef, or even longer words like unleavened, they all have the same eh sound in them. That sound is spelled a few different ways, even in the words I provided, including e, ai, and ea. Wells says forget the spelling, they all have the same sound. In my case, it's eh. So let's group them and refer to that group with a key word. In this case, the keyword is dress. At the risk of activating a linguistics winter soldier, the etymology nerd guy, the keywords he came up with are kit, dress, trap, lot, strut, foot, bath, cloth, nurse, fleece, face, palm, thought, goat, goose, price, choice, mouth, near, square, start, north, force, cure, happy, letter, comma. You can already hear that I pronounce some of those the same, but in other accents of English, vowels in words like trap and bath are pronounced slightly differently. And the magic is that you can refer to the list of words for each of these and just completely characterize the vowels of an accent, and then learn to do it. The last three are super British. The happy thing is so you can capture the Queen saying happy. Letter is about how you pronounce that last ER sound, and comma is about the schwa, the sound, distinct from strut. So to give an example, a New Zealand accent has opposite kit and dress vowels to mine. It's a nice dress. That was my best attempt at a New Zealand accent.
Hey, Britt.
Oh, hi, man.
Brit.
It's called Britt, you got it going on.
Now, a word of caution. Sometimes people just starting out in linguistics will say things like, when they say words like dress, they use the kit vowel. This is inaccurate. It's that their dress vowel is I. The cool thing here is that if you know the IPA, which I've made videos and live streams about, you can learn the basics of an accent in all of 5 minutes. Then it might take some more time to practice. One thing you'll notice is what linguists call mergers. That's just when two classes of lexical sets are pronounced with the same sound. So for instance, there's the cot-caught merger, which is dominant in California among white and non-black people. This means that vowels in words like coffee, dog, and awkward, and so on are pronounced the same as cot, lot, spot, and so on. This is how you get Californians saying things like ako taco. That doesn't work in New York with the caught vowel. Thought in Wells's system is pronounced ooh, small coffee, I'll eat a hot dog. I'll never have a hot dog. A second piece that linguists often talk about is conditioned mergers, which just means that you pronounce two vowels the same, but only in certain contexts. A famous one is what's called the pin-pen merger in the United States. In the South, where before N and M, everything is their version of the kit vowel, which is actually kind of more than one vowel. Key it. If you start paying attention to this, you will hear it everywhere. You'll hear how accents work. Here's an example. In my dissertation, I demonstrated, for the first time ever in the academic literature on African American English, which is not a big deal here, that the middle of the US, going from Mississippi up to Chicago and Detroit, pronounces the thought vowel, in certain contexts, more like ow. Definitely before velars like K and G, kind of like my mouth vowel in the Wells system. This is how you get George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic, all of them from Detroit, saying, dog. Nasty dog. I actually have a pet theory that the pronunciation preceded the adoption of spelling the term of address, DAWG, but who knows. Lastly, you have intonation. This is a whole world to itself, and frankly, linguists aren't super great at it yet. Some people use a system called Toby, which sucks. It's bad and they should feel embarrassed to present it at conferences. And others use a totally different system that works great for British English, but not so much for other language varieties. I used the term music before, and I think that honestly, musicians are better at this than linguists. But here's some example of intonation and accents, which should get your intonational juices flowing. Pause. Brace yourself for random linguistic facts in no particular order. 1. Men and women often use different pitch ranges. Duh. In some languages, like Japanese, for cultural reasons, people exaggerate these differences. In some cultures, including some Germanic people and also Jewish Americans, they don't. This can create cultural conflict as women from the latter groups are perceived as being more blunt and direct by the former. 2. Black Americans have been repeatedly demonstrated to use a much wider pitch range than white Americans in day-to-day speech. Forever? Like this forever, 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 ever, forever, ever. Sometimes this is perceived as high energy or even aggressive. The only group that had a similarly wide range of pitches was Jewish Americans. This can create cultural conflict. 3. Russians speaking English are sometimes perceived as rude because they do questions differently. If it's a statement you've turned into a question, you don't have a rising pitch at the end, you have a high pitch on the word you're asking about. That's how you go from, you like that, to, you like that? In sentences with question words, like who, what, when, where, and so on, there's no question intonation because the word does that. Try it in English and see just how pissed off people get. It's the difference between, how can I help you, and how can I help you? Let me know if you've ever had an experience like that where you thought someone was angry, but it turns out they were just a native speaker of Arabic or something. So these 3 categories are basically what constitutes an accent. And now you should have the skills to go out in the world and listen more carefully. It's not that New Yorkers just say coffee and dog funny. A stereotypical New York accent has that sound for every word in the thought lexical set. I just said pause a minute ago. Small coffee, large coffee, pause, dog. If you liked this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and maybe share it with a friend you think will find it interesting. If you want to support the channel, you can do so right here on YouTube with super thanks and super chat, or over at patreon.com/languagejones. Special shout out and thanks to all my patrons. And if you like this video, YouTube thinks you'll like this one. This is the first in a series I'll be adding to approximately every month, so I'm going to actually use all of this to analyze and break down different people's accents. Why couldn't my friend Bree understand the people north of the wall in Game of Thrones? What is Ryan Coogler even saying? Is Tina Fey's Philadelphia accent more authentic than Kevin Hart's? If you got this far, please leave me a comment and let me know which celebrities or what accents you're most interested in. Pick any language. Until next time, happy learning.